Good afternoon, Chair. Our final witness for today is Siobhan Sayer.
Good afternoon. I'm Heather. I'm your usher today, so I'm going to take you through the oath. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, I can. Yep.
Excellent. Could you take your Bible in your right hand, please?
Yep.
And then repeat after me.
Yeah.
I swear by Almighty God
I swear by Almighty God
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the truth.
and nothing but the truth.
It's lovely. Thank you very much.
As you know, Ms. Sayer, my name is Catriona Hodge, and I ask questions on behalf of the inquiry. Please, can you state your full name?
Yes, it's Mrs. Siobhan Sayer.
Thank you, Mrs. Sayer. You made a witness statement on the 13th of January of this year, is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you have a copy of that statement before you?
Yes, I do.
Please, could you turn to the final page of your statement on page 10?
Yep, got it.
Can you see your signature at the bottom of that page?
Yes, I can.
When you made that statement on the 13th of January, was the content true to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, it was.
I'm going to begin, Mrs. Sayer, by asking you a few questions about your background, if I may.
Yep, that's fine.
How old are you now?
I'm 56.
Are you married?
I am.
For how long have you been married?
35 years.
Do you have any children?
I have 4.
How old are your children now?
Now they are 32, 30, 25 and 14.
You're currently living with your husband and one of your 4 children, is that right?
I am, yes.
Until recently, I believe you'd worked as a teaching assistant, is that correct?
That's correct, yes I had.
At the local high school, is that right?
High school, yep.
For how long had you held that role?
6 years.
I'd like to ask you some questions about how you came to work for the post office as a sub-postmistress.
Yep, that's fine.
Please, can you explain the circumstances in which you came to acquire a branch?
My husband and I ran a classic car restoration company, and the garage site and post office that we purchased had the post office included in it. We wanted to expand our classic car restoration business into a bit larger site, and this site came up so we could all be under one umbrella. So we purchased the garage with the intent that the classic car restoration company would join it there, but within that was the post office, which we agreed to take on.
Which part of the business were you responsible for?
Post office and everyday running of the shop, and petrol sales and things like that.
And your husband, what did he do?
Classic car, he was doing the classic car, so he was in the other garage on the other site at the time.
Which branch of the post office was it?
Erpingham.
And do you recall when you became the sub-postmistress of the branch?
2000, I think. 2001, 2000.
I think you've, in your statement, you mentioned the date of 6th of January of 2000. Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
that sounds right.
When was the Horizon system installed at your post office branch?
It was installed before we purchased, about a year before.
And when
So it was already in there when we bought the post office.
Did you receive any training on Horizon when you were appointed?
No. I had 4 days, a trainer came into the post office and literally sat beside me. But there was no training as far as the Horizon system. It was just day-to-day stuff on Horizon.
Did you experience any problems using the Horizon system?
Not at that time.
Your branch was audited in January 2008, is that correct?
That's correct.
What was the outcome of that audit?
There was a shortfall of, I think it was 23,000, which was then changed to 18,000 by the post office. They came in and audited and then removed my keys.
When you say they, to whom are you referring?
Two auditors from the post office.
Were you present when the audit was carried out?
Yes.
And can you describe how it was conducted?
Well, I was present, but I was sent out of the office when it was done, and felt I was being talked over rather than talked to. They weren't really interested in any explanations. It was just getting those figures off, and locking me out of the post office, really.
What happened after the alleged shortfall of about £18,500 was discovered?
The keys were removed from me. I came home because I was in absolute shock. I wanted to just explain to someone what was going on. And I then received a phone call the following day from Colin Price, one of the post office investigators, to say that they would want to now make an investigation.
And what inquiries did they carry out?
They came to the house. That was their first port of call, was coming to my home address. 3 of them arrived. There was Colin Price, Paul Dawkins and John Longman arrived at my door, just saying that they wanted to have a chat about, and trying to see my point of view and my case, and we were going to just have a chat through about it. But in fact, it turned out to be a full investigation with recording equipment, which I was unaware of.
When you say there was recording equipment, are you referring to an interview?
Yes.
Before we come to your interview, you said your home was searched, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Can you describe how the search was conducted, please?
They came in, asked if they could search the property, which at the time I said there was no issue because I had nothing to hide. So they went through all my kitchen drawers, they went through filing cabinets, they went up through all the bedrooms, they ended up in my bedroom, tipping my underwear drawer upside down while joking about where I'd hidden the money. And it would make their job a lot easier if I could just say where the money was. I felt humiliated, scared to death. It was a horrific time, horrific.
Your youngest child was a baby at this point, is that right?
6 months, yeah, she was 6 months old.
Was she present in the home when the search was carried out?
In the home, but I wasn't allowed to see her.
What effect did this have on her?
Well, she then started crying and I wasn't allowed to leave to go to her. So it just finished me completely and I just had to end the interview because I couldn't continue any longer.
You've mentioned that an interview was carried out. Was that in your home?
Yes, it was. It was in my dining room.
Were you legally represented?
No, I wasn't given the offer.
Was anything seized or taken by the investigators from your home?
Bin bags of paperwork. It was not identified on what. I think there was bank statements and business bank statements and credit card statements, but it was not individualised and they left with several bin bags of paperwork.
Did you ever see that paperwork again?
Only when I went through my then legal team and demanded it came back, but that was about 2 years before I saw it back. And then I don't know whether it was all back or what it was, it just arrived in an envelope.
What was the condition of your mental health at the time this investigation was carried out?
I was suffering postnatal depression, which I had been warned about. So I had to go and see a GP and I was then told I was not fit for interview because I just went to pieces.
You've described going to see your GP. What was the outcome of visiting your GP?
I was put on medication and a letter was written by him to the post office investigators to say that I was not fit for interview.
Did the investigation cease at that point?
It ceased on the fact that I then didn't have any more investigations, but Mr. Price felt it necessary to come to my door regularly to find out how I was, and on whether we could set a date for another investigation with a solicitor. And I would regularly find him parked outside the house, and just felt generally harassed and intimidated.
Were you interviewed again?
Yes, I was, but I had by that time had got legal representation, so it was at a solicitor's.
Do you recall roughly how long it was between your first interview and your second interview?
8 months, I believe.
What action did the post office take as a result of this alleged shortfall that was found on Horizon?
They pursued me through the courts for false accounting, and at the time they wanted theft as well. But in fact, on the day of my case, the theft was dropped.
Just in terms of our timing, the audit initially took place in January of 2008, that's right.
Yeah.
You were suspended in March of that year, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
How was your suspension communicated to you?
A letter was written by the contracts manager to say it had been terminated.
The following month, forgive me, I think you were first suspended, is that right?
Yes, yeah, they suspended me. I think when they came to the house that day, I was told I was suspended. Then they terminated my contract.
And the termination took effect in April of 2008, is that right?
Yeah, but straight away, yeah.
You were later charged with theft and false accounting, is that right?
That's correct.
And was that in connection with the shortfall of approximately £18,500?
Yeah.
How did you plead to the charges?
I was advised by counsel to plead guilty to false accounting because technically I had false accounted, and they felt that no jury, because I wanted to plead not guilty, but they felt that a jury would not believe me over the post office, and that my best bet was to just take the false accounting, and the chances are then I wouldn't actually then have a prison sentence.
Did you or your barrister know whether there were others in a similar position to you?
Not at that time, because I was told I was the only one, constantly told by the post office.
How did it make you feel to be advised that you should be pleading guilty to these charges?
Absolutely horrendous, because I didn't want to. I wasn't guilty. I did nothing wrong. It absorbed my life. I haven't been the same since, really.
You entered your guilty plea in February 2010, is that right?
Yeah, it was my daughter's birthday.
How old were your children when you were prosecuted by the post office?
19, 16, 10, and I think you would have been 2.
What did you tell them about your trial?
I couldn't tell them. I went to court that morning thinking I wouldn't be coming home, and that would be left to Dad. It would be left to Paul to discuss that with them if I didn't return, because I couldn't bring myself to tell them.
You've just said that you didn't think you'd be returning home. Were you expecting to receive a custodial sentence?
That's what I was advised by barristers, that I would receive a custodial sentence.
How did it feel to know that you might be separated from your 4 children?
Horrific. Absolutely horrific. I couldn't even begin imagining what that would be like. And I just went to court that day with the case packed, not knowing whether I'd be coming home.
What sanction did the judge in fact impose?
I got 40 weeks, suspended for 18 months, I believe it was, 250 hours community service.
Where did you carry out your community service?
At the cancer charity shop in Norwich.
And what type of work did you do for the charity?
I was behind the till because they felt I had retail training, so I would be best placed behind the till, where the post office felt that I hadn't been best placed.
You've described in your statement that the post office brought an application under the Proceeds of Crime Act, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Do you recall roughly when that application was made?
Shortly after my sentence, as far as I'm aware, it was all around the same time period.
And can you explain what the post office was seeking to recover from you?
They wanted to recover the 18,500.
What was the outcome of that application?
They have put a hold, or had put a hold over the house, a charge over the house, because at the time we didn't have £18,500 to pay the post office back.
Does the charge remain on your house today?
It should have been removed, but I have never checked since I was acquitted last year. I haven't actually followed that up on whether the charge is still on my home, and I haven't been notified it isn't.
Did you ultimately pay the £18,500?
No, I didn't. It went on to a stay at court because I think then everything was snowballing as far as the post office was concerned, and their legal team then put it on a stay at the courts.
Your conviction was overturned in April last year, is that right?
Yes, that was.
I'd like to ask you now a little bit about the effect that these events have had upon you and your family.
Yeah.
When you were accused by the post office of theft and fraud, what effect did that have on your mental health?
It just spiraled down and down. I didn't leave the house for a couple of years. It was at least 2 years. A shame. No one would believe me. They constantly told me I was the only one. And eventually, when that's told you enough, you begin to believe it. So I began doubting whether it was me that had not intentionally taken it, but something I had done wrong. I'd called for help. I had done everything that Helpline asked me to, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And that had quite an impact on my mental health for several years. I deal with it now, or have dealt with it now, by just tucking it away in the back of my head, because that's the only way I have been able to continue for the last 12 years. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to go forward.
Did you receive any treatment for the problems you were suffering?
I'm receiving treatment at this point now, yeah.
But when you were first convicted, did you receive? Was your conviction reported in the local press?
Yes, it was. Yeah, the following day, which also added to my anxieties and stress, because I knew I live in a small village and everybody was talking about it. And that made it very difficult for me to then carry on my normal life of going to the local shops, being seen by people I knew. I knew a lot of people running the post office, and I was ashamed.
How did it affect your standing in the local community?
I had quite a lot of support from people, but a lot of people just avoided me, because that was easier then, I think, than them actually having to doubt that I may or may not have done it.
And what about your friendships?
My close friends have always stuck by me, those that I've allowed in, and family have stuck by me, but I keep myself very much to myself now, and I trust no one.
What happened to your business after you were convicted?
We had to sell because I couldn't continue any longer going to work, going into that business. It just was too much strain. I couldn't go with it.
Were you able to recover what you had invested in it originally?
No. I just wanted to get out. I just needed to get out, and we couldn't run it. It couldn't be run without me. So we decided to cut our losses and sell.
After your contract with the post office was terminated, were you able to obtain other employment?
I did. After a couple of years, because I didn't feel I was fit enough to do anything, and I was terrified because I knew it would come up on my disclosure and barring, anything I wanted to do. So I went to the local college and applied to be a learning support assistant there, which I got the job, but not without having to have another interview with Human Resources to explain why that was on my disclosure and barring. And again, they were very good and very supportive, but it's still something that I struggle with. I struggle to say this is why it's on there, because I still feel an amount of guilt, even though I know I wasn't guilty.
Do you still work in the role of a teaching assistant?
No, I gave up that post recently because with the post office now still continuing, it brought everything back, and I just couldn't continue my role professionally with the children while having my own problems.
You and your husband have worked as foster carers, is that right?
Yes, it has. Yes.
What effect did your conviction have upon your ability to foster young children?
As far as our fostering agency, they were brilliant. They backed us. That wasn't a problem. We had a lot of parents of children that we had that were then obviously having little jibes and was I fit to be a foster carer, etc., etc. But with support of the local authority and my fostering agency, they stuck by us the last 12 years. And now everything's fine, but it was embarrassing. Again, it was this humiliation of having to explain to people and then believing me, really.
How many children have you and your husband fostered?
To date, 25. And I think this has given me some strength on being an advocate for them, on fighting for what is right, because if nothing else, that's taught me that's what you need to do, is you need to fight for what is right.
What effect did the post office investigation and prosecution have on your husband?
I think at work, his close friends were very supportive. A lot of people just didn't speak about it, even though it was in the local press, and everybody, after my case last April, and I was cleared, it was amazing how many people came out then to say didn't think she'd done it, but no one said that at the beginning, because I just don't think people believed. So I think he found it a little bit difficult, really.
Were your own children affected by your conviction?
Yes, they were bullied at school. Because it was in the local, as I say, it's a small village community. It was made very public knowledge by local newspapers. And they were at the local high school. So, yeah, their life wasn't fun for a while.
We've discussed the fact that your conviction was overturned last year.
Yeah.
How did it feel to discover your conviction was being quashed?
Absolute relief. But I still struggle to get excited about that. I can't. It's impacted on my life so much that I think I've learned to live with it, that at the moment I still don't feel free of it, and I don't know whether I ever will.
How do you feel now about the way in which you were treated by the post office?
Appalled. How I think my biggest struggle is understanding how any human being can be like that to another human being, knowing that those people are innocent. And when the investigators came into my house, I wasn't the first person. They knew I wasn't the first person, yet they went out and lied to me, as did the post office. And I can't live with myself knowing I'd done that to another human being, and I don't know how they can.
What would you like the post office to do to put right what happened to you and others in your position?
I want to see the people that were responsible for this to be held to account, to go through what I've been through. Yeah, they need to be held to account. Someone knew from top to bottom people were responsible for this, and they need to be held to account now on how many lives they've destroyed. Because even though I've been found not guilty, that's still affected my life, and it always will.
I have no further questions for you, Mrs. Sayer. Is there anything you would like to say to the Chair that we've not already covered?
No, I don't think so. There is. Thank you.
Chair, do you have any questions for Mrs. Sayer?
No questions, just my thanks to you, Mrs. Sayer, for coming to give evidence to me.
Thank you.
And being so clear and concise in your evidence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That concludes our evidence for this afternoon.
All right, so we start again at 10 o'clock in the morning, Ms. Hodge?
Yes, sir.
All right, bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.